As human beings, we're not always going to get things right. Sometimes we get things wrong. Sometimes we get things rather egregiously wrong. And in the case of Baker Mayfield, I think it's safe to say that we were rather egregiously wrong about him. Welcome to the Snap Count Show. All right, everybody, welcome to the Snap Count Show. I'm your host, David Street. Here with me is Thaddeus Lloyd.
Hello.
You may have noticed that neither Ed nor Matthew are here. They are both on vacation and they will be back soon. So, Baker Mayfield, you know, pretty much everybody, and if I'm being honest, including me to a certain extent, didn't have a lot of faith in Baker, if any faith at all. Now, for me personally, I wouldn't say that I thought he was an outright bust or anything like that. But from the perspective of a Bucs fan, when you go from Tom Brady, a guy who had won multiple Super Bowls, including for your own team, to Baker Mayfield, a guy who at that point was bouncing around from team to team and had more questions than answers, then you can't really blame anybody for being skeptical of the move at the time. But Baker Mayfield is now in his third year with us, and well, not only has his career taken a complete revival, a complete resurgence, he's finally found his home. He's emerged as one of the MVP frontrunners of the league, if not the MVP frontrunner, and he has led the Bucs to the best record in the NFC, a tie for the best record in the NFL, and according to most of the major publications, they have the Bucs as the number one team right now, and of course that is largely thanks to Baker Mayfield. And so, Thad, I want to turn this over to you, and it begs the question, how in the world were we so wrong about Baker? Because you know, this isn't like a guy like Sam Darnold, where he got off to a really bad start in the NFL, and it seems like he's actually kind of, he's doing pretty good for himself right now. But Baker Mayfield actually got off to a great start. He led the Browns to their most successful season in 20 years or so. So it wasn't like he came out of nowhere. So why and how were we so wrong about him?
It is a little bit in the part. It is a little bit like the Sam Darnold thing. Sam Darnold drafted to the Jets. Baker Mayfield drafted to the Browns. Two what we would consider horrible organizations. Now these guys got drafted years ago. Okay, they're already in their eighth year in the league, or seventh or eighth year in the league. So this has been a while ago. However, since that time, we still have those organizations are just terrible. So they've just been terribly run the past decade, even 2 decades in some cases. So we know organizational success really determines how well a quarterback's going to play sometimes. I've learned recently, especially watching these past 2 years, how much of a difference coaching makes, because we've had these, high floor or high ceiling players get drafted in the first round, and a third of them make it, a third of them are average, and a third of them flop in the first round. It happens every single year. That's typically how it goes. And the ones that flop, well, we really don't give them a lot of chances, or we hadn't in the past. Now we have given them a lot of chances. With Mayfield specifically, it was actually really impressive how he was able to get the Browns their first playoff win in, like you said, 20 years. They had a really impressive season. However, bad organization, and guess what? They're like, we're gonna remember the infamous words. I think it was Jimmy Haslam, the owner. We're gonna bring in an adult into the room, and they brought in Deshaun Watson. That was the wrong kind of adult, and that has turned into one of the most disastrous trades in NFL history. Baker Mayfield was let go, signs with the Panthers, another not great organization. Him and Sam Darnold are on the same team, funnily enough. And so he it doesn't look like he's doing well. Baker Mayfield, oh, former first overall pick. He's trashed, he's washed. But it was the Panthers. Like okay, and then he signs the mid-season deal with the Rams, leads that comeback drive, and people are like, whoa, where did this come from? You know, and so we're like, okay, and people teams are like, okay, he might still have something here. So that's why the Bucs gave it the prove it deal. And when I saw that deal, all the way back in 2023, I'm like, okay, this is actually a good deal. Like, I don't think Baker's a bad quarterback. He's just inconsistent. But he's totally outshined everybody's expectations of him. And one thing I've also listened to that I've heard is players growing. Like people, it's really hard to gauge how much a player is going to grow, but it varies between players. But it seems like since Baker joined the Bucks, he learned to mature and grow into a better person, and it's reflected in his play as well. He's also become a better athlete in some cases. So because he's in bad organization. Play with the Rams, for one game. Sean McVay, that a good organization. He goes to Tampa, who has been a good, well-run organization under Jason Light, Bruce Arians, um, now uh, Todd Bowles, who's not like Super Bowl head coach material, but he's a really good coach. He's had a lot of experience. So he's been finally been able to go into a stable organization that can help support the quarterback, help take the pressure off the quarterback. And that's why I believe he was able to flourish his first year into his second year. He has gotten not only one, but two offensive coordinators hired as head coaches. So it's been really impressive. I think it's an organizational thing, but also just him becoming more of a better person and a player in general, maturing wise.
Yeah, I love the point that you made about the organizations that he's played with, because as a fan, you can't help but notice that the two teams where Baker's career took a downturn are two of the worst teams in the NFL, the Browns and the Panthers. Now, to be fair here, the Panthers, as it stands, are 3-3, and they've done surprisingly pretty well. In fact, may I remind you that I actually predicted the Panthers to have a surprising winning record. However, that being said, when you look at the big overall picture, not just a small sample size, then yes, certainly the Panthers have been one of the worst organizations in the NFL. Whereas you look at the two teams where Baker's career took a turn for the better, the Rams and the Bucs, as you've pretty much said or implied, those are two of the better teams in the NFL. Now, obviously, in the case of the Rams, Baker Mayfield never had a shot at winning the starting job because the Rams are locked in with Matthew Stafford. Both the Rams knew that, and Baker knew that. But getting a starting job with the Rams was obviously never the point. The point for Baker was to remind everybody that he can still be a starter. And obviously, the Bucs at that time were without a quarterback when Tom Brady retired for the second time, and this time for good. And as you said, prove it deal. That was really the only deal that they could give Baker. Baker certainly proved himself, and look where he's at now. I don't think even the most ardent Baker supporters could have predicted just how much of a turnaround his career would have at this point.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I thought, he was going to be fine in Tampa. They got good weapons like, Mike Evans is old reliable at this point. Chris Godwin is good, coming off from, Tom Brady throwing for 5,000 yards his last year. You're like, yeah, this is a good situation, but it's blossomed the past 2.5 years into something even greater than a lot of what people expected.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So then now we're going to move on to the idiot of the week. Um, we like every week we have a lot of examples to go by, but this week, like we did last week, we are going to take a shot at an organization, and this time it's going to be the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans uh, hired the former Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan last off season or 2 off seasons ago, and I questioned why they did that because he wasn't even calling the plays. I was like, okay, I mean, I know they got to the Super Bowl, but he wasn't even calling the plays. So I questioned that, but I'm like, okay. And Brian Callahan just did not win at all. His teams looked messy. Last year he got a pass because it was the Will Levis experiment. He had one good game, throwing 4 touchdowns his first game, and then he threw 4 touchdowns the rest of the season. So they were like, okay, we'll give you a pass for that because Will Levis was the meme last year, and it was so funny to watch. But now, last year, going from the meme to now the disappointment because it's not funny anymore. You have Cam Ward, who's obviously a much better quarterback, at least, has the tools to be a much better quarterback than what they've previously had. Because previously they had Ryan Tannehill for years. But now it looks like Callahan was ruining Ward because they're just been abysmal this year. Like they barely topped 20 points, and their one win was a miraculous set of events which had to happen in that game. It was a complete, utter disaster for the Cardinals for that win. But the rest of their games, they have struggled offensively terribly. And their defense has not been great either, even though they do have some really good pieces on that defense. So it was time to fire Brian Callahan. The fire Brian Callahan. But now what are you going to do? I mean, he was calling the plays. Callahan was calling the plays for the first couple games. That wasn't working. Like, okay, go to the offensive coordinator, switch it up. And it was even worse somehow. It was even worse. So this is just a bad organization, okay? And this as far as like recent success, but David, I'll let you take it as far as before this because what happened with Vrabel?
Mm. Yeah, if you look at the history of the recent history of the Titans head coaches, Mike Vrabel was far and away their best head coach, and there really wasn't even a close second. Now, Titans fans will tell you about his record, his last couple of seasons there, and that it was time for him to go. And yeah, maybe that is true, but look at how Vrabel is thriving with the Patriots in just his first year there. And if you look at the Patriots numbers and the way that they've been, winning, it's not like they've been getting lucky. That they've been playing really good football. And I think I might have mentioned it on the show, or maybe I mentioned it in conversation before this show. But I was watching an interview with Coach Vrabel, and Vrabel will never explicitly admit it, but I promise you, he is still pissed off that the Titans let him go, and I would be pissed off too. And and you talk about Callahan, questioning the hire, and certainly I question the hire as well for the exact same reason as you, Thad, that he was never even the play caller. Like the Bengals went to the Super Bowl when he was the OC, but he was never the play caller. Zach Taylor was the play caller, and to be honest, Thad, I don't even think Zach Taylor is that good of I don't think Zach Taylor is that good of a coach. Like I think that
I agree as well. Yeah.
yeah, really, I think that Super Bowl run was just Joe Burrow putting that entire offense on his back. It kind of, and we see how horrible the Bengals are without Joe Burrow. It's like, you remember how dominant the Colts looked with Peyton Manning, but when Peyton Manning had to sit out for neck surgery, they just looked like a completely different team without him. They looked horrible without him. Yeah, I see that as the exact same situation. I think Burrow has just been, carrying that team on his back. And listen, a head coaching opportunity is a very rare opportunity, and certainly I don't think anybody blames Brian Callahan for taking the job because, as a family man, I assume Brian Callahan has a family. I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming he does. And you're obviously going to take the best position to support your family, to feed your family, even if deep down you think you're not qualified. And then you look at the recent history of the Titans GMs. This is an organization that supposedly preaches patience, and yet since I think 2022, they've gone through four general managers. Like they've been recycling general managers left and right. You know, from John Robinson to I forget the name of the current guy, but they've gone through a lot of GMs lately. And so I was thinking about this before we came on that, and I wanted to get your input. Like, what does it take to hire or to have a good GM? Like, is it just a matter of being lucky? Is it a matter of the football gods being on your side? Like, I'll use a personal example. You know, everybody GM, and I think he is a great GM. But it should be noted that a lot of those praises have been being, they've been sung since Tom Brady. Like ever since we got Tom Brady, he's turned our program into a winning culture. Even though Brady isn't with us anymore, but before Brady, there was a lot of criticisms toward Jason Light because he was getting good individual players, but we were still losing. So like, what does it take for an NFL franchise to hire a good GM and like what is
Well, that entails so everything in the NFL, especially NFL, it's all top down. What we were talking about with those other organizations like the Panthers and the Jets and the Browns, the owners meddle too much and they don't, focus on the culture that they're building. It's all top down. It starts from the owner, and then it goes to GM. You got to get the right GM, and the GM can do everything right, but then he's got to have the right head coach to have those players that he drafted work. And then you got to have the right assistant coaches as well. Now it's more important goes GM, head coach, quarterback. Those are probably the most important power structure. But if you don't have a competent, at least bare minimum, competent owner who doesn't really meddle with the team that much, then your floor is going to be a lot higher than other teams whose owners like to, save a little bit of money. You know what I'm saying? So it's all real top down, and then you could have the GM, you could have a good owner, and then it's just the luck of finding that real good head coach who can then find his quarterback that's right for him. Because we've had it with the Chargers. A good example is the Chargers. Chargers for years had been a competent franchise with Phil Rivers because they had the quarterback and they had good pieces. Now they went through a couple different GMs, but they didn't have too many GMs during that time. And then Phil Rivers leaves and they're left in limbo. But then they got Justin Herbert. Okay, they got the quarterback. They got the GM who's actually done a decent job of drafting and picking up free agents. They just got to find the head coach. And they found the head coach last year in Jim Harbaugh. And this team looks a lot better. So you need all three components to be a successful franchise: GM, head coach, quarterback. Once you have all those three, you are automatically playoff caliber, a playoff caliber team every year, no matter what. So I believe that's really what it takes. Now, obviously, like I said, you got to have the owner to make those three hires, but those are the three main hires that you want to have to be a successful organization.
Yeah, definitely. I think you make a good point on everything you just said. And Titans fans, for your sake, I hope it gets better, and I believe it will. Trust me, as a Bucs fan, I didn't think things would ever get better, but you just never know. But let's go ahead and move on to the game previews now. Starting with the London game between the Jags and the Rams, and like at this point, like this is pretty much a home game for the Jags because London has been their second home for the past 5 or 10 years. So, Thad, take it away.
All right. Yeah. So we have Rams and Jags. I think, man, it's an international game. And international games have been really weird. Like really weird. Now yeah, they've just been weird. We've had last time it was the Browns and Vikings. That was a weird game because Jordan Addison, he's benched for disciplinary reasons, but then catches the game-winning touchdown. I don't know how that works, but and then we had a couple games before that. Um, which I forgot off the top of my head, but they were also just out of the. Oh, recently, last week, we had, that was 2 weeks ago, last week we had Jets Broncos, where you and I had more passing yards, net yards, than Justin Fields did. So, yeah, in an 11-13 bore fest, essentially. So that you will never know what you're going to get out of international games, even more regular than the normal regular NFL games, because we don't know a lot about NFL games. If you were a betting man this season, you would be scratching your head every single week because the outcomes of games this year have just been wild. It's crazy the ups and downs the season's had. We still really don't know who the top team is for the first time in years. We just don't know who it is. So it's been a fascinating season. So I'm going to try my best here for this game because not only it's an NFL game, but it's international.
Hmm.
So the presuppositions I have on this game, I do think the Rams are a better team than the Jaguars, but the Jaguars have been pulling wins out of their butt recently. I really do think this Jaguars defense is elite. This is an elite Jaguars defense. Their new defensive coordinator, I think Campanelli or Antonelli, has been doing a fantastic job with that defense. I still don't trust Trevor Lawrence. He had the one good moment against Kansas City, but floundered against the Seahawks defense last week. So I still really don't trust that offense. I mean, yeah, I really can't do it. And then on the Rams side, obviously Matthew Stafford's still playing at an elite level. However, it looks like they might be missing Puka Nakua for this
Hmm.
game, which is a big blow. So it's going to make things even tighter, in my opinion. I'm going to expect this to be a low scoring game, probably under 40 points. Sorry. Turn that off. Yeah, so expect a low scoring game in this one, but I'm gonna trust Matthew Stafford over Trevor Lawrence in this one. So give me the Rams 20-17.
Yeah, something that fascinates me about the Rams overall is when they went all in for their Super Bowl run in 2021. I think everybody thought that was going to be a 1 year wonder kind of thing. But so far, to the Rams' credit, it hasn't. They've shown us that they are here to stay, and they've been consistently good. Since the Super Bowl, I think since then they've only had like one losing season, if I recall correctly. But overall, they've been an excellent mainstay. Um, and then as for the Jags, I mean, I'm in complete agreement with you that I don't really have a lot of faith in Trevor Lawrence, but that defense is for real, and I think we're at the point in the season now where for some teams you're not surprised when they win, and then for other teams you're like, well, how do they keep doing it? And I think the Jags have certainly established themselves as a team where when they pull off a win, it doesn't surprise you because they've been doing it over and over and over again. So when it comes to the actual game, I do agree that overall the Rams are better. I think the Rams and the Jags are about equal on defense because don't forget the Rams have an excellent defense as well. I do think that Matthew Stafford is a much better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence is, obviously. But that being said, the Jags do have home field advantage here. As I said, London has been their second home um, for the past 5 or 10 years. So give me the Jaguars in a low-scoring affair. The offense once again is going to be doo-doo, but the defense will step up. So give me the Jags over the Rams, 14-13.
Okay, yeah, that's that's even low scoring than mine. But yeah, we really don't know what's going to happen on international games.
Hmm.
Um, all right, you got your game next.
Yeah, so the Eagles and the Vikings. You know, I think I know I've said this before, but there is some deja vu going on here with the Eagles. And what do I mean by that? Well, all right. Compare the 2 years where Nick Sirianni took them to the Super Bowl, and then compare the years afterwards, right? 2022, the Eagles under Sirianni make it to the Super Bowl, and obviously they lost, but they still made it to the Super Bowl. The next year, um, they still have a good season, at least by results, but they weren't nearly the same dominant team as they were the season before. And we all know what happened. The Eagles completely stumbled down the stretch, which culminated in a embarrassing loss to the Bucs in the wild card round. Right now, last year the Eagles make it to the Super Bowl again. This time, winning it, and they were clearly one of the more dominant teams in the NFL. Only team more dominant than them was the Detroit Lions. Now this year so far, the Eagles still have a winning record. They are in first place in the NFC East, and yet, you know, just like before, they're not really dominating opponents in the same fashion as they did before. So total deja vu. And Saquon Barkley so far has not been the player he was last year. Not even close. Now I don't know if that's simply a case of he had such a good season last year that he could only go down from there. I don't know if teams have figured him out. I don't know if he's maybe battling some kind of lingering injury. I don't know what it is, but so far he is averaging just under 4 yards a carry, and he's not even the leading touchdown guy for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is. Although Jalen Hurts being the dual threat quarterback he is, that probably shouldn't be a surprise. Point being is that Saquon Barkley is not the same guy as he was last year. Now, when you look at the Vikings quite literally have been inconsistent in every sense of the word, in that they have not won consecutive games, but they also haven't lost consecutive games either. I believe the record is win loss, win loss, win, which would equate to a 3-2 record, which is what the record is. 3-2. Right now, their starting quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, is questionable. He might return. He might not. I don't know. But in his absence, Carson Wentz has certainly been a serviceable quarterback with 5 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. But you know, I just I don't know what to kind of make of this whole thing. So when I look at who's going to win, I got to take the Eagles. The Eagles have dropped 2 straight. I don't see them dropping 3 straight, especially not to a backup like Wentz. And even if McCarthy comes back, he's still a rookie, and you got to imagine he's still going to have some kind of he's still going to be banged up a little bit. And overall, the Eagles still have the best roster in the NFL, in my opinion, on paper. If not the best roster, certainly top three at least. So you know what? Last game, I predicted a close game, but this time I don't think this game is going to be close, Dad. I'm going to take the Eagles 38 to 22 over the Vikings.
Oh yeah, that's that's definitely a bold prediction. But yeah, I agree with you. The whole thing with Saquon, I I've heard it explained to me that it's an offensive coordinator issue.
Mm,
You go from Kellen Moore to Kevin Patullo, and Patullo just overall hasn't done a great job at all. Like the first 4 games, they had one good quarter. 1 out of 8 quarters was a good quarter, and it's funny because everyone was asking the Eagles, play a full game because they either had a terrible first half, great second half, or a terrible second half but a great first half. And the weird thing is they actually technically played a complete game last week, but they still lost by 17 to the freaking Giants. Like how does that even happen? So we're gonna have to look at this. I'm gonna say it. I really think the Eagles are also gonna win this one. They're gonna want to bounce back. They're too good of a talented team not to. Like they still have a super talented roster. Like there's no denying it, and it is, I think, better than the Vikings. So it's going to come down to coaching. Can the Eagles coaching be better even a little bit than the Vikings coaching staff? Because we know the Vikings coaching staff is actually really good. It's one of the best in the league. It's just the team itself has been inconsistent because they
Mhm.
really haven't had a great quarterback to play this year. Maybe should have kept Sam Darnold. So I don't know, but I'm thinking the Eagles are a good team. I do think they're going to bounce back, but probably not in a blowout because we have not seen them be explosive. Really, they've only explosive for one half against the Rams, and they've hardly barely been able to score 30 points. So give me the Eagles, also because the Vikings defense is good,
Mhm.
even if the offense isn't going to be good. But give me the Eagles in this one, 27-10 in this one, and also another blowout.
Nice. Also, don't forget the Eagles actually did have another explosive first half against my Bucs, and then our defense shut their offense out in the second half.
Oh yeah, Jalen Hurts with 0 passing yards in the second half. That was
Yes, yes.
yeah. I
Yeah.
I don't know how that happens. Okay, third game I got Colts versus Chargers. This I can't wait for this game. This will be fun. We got the Chargers who started off really hot. Then they've struggled the past couple games because of injuries on the offensive line. Justin Herbert has still looked really good. It's just the defense has been missing Khalil Mack and the offensive line, like I mentioned. Those two losses have not been good for the Chargers, so that's why they've gone 1-1 or 1-2 the past couple weeks. They managed to squeak out a win against the Dolphins. It's looking shaky for the Chargers. Now they are led by Jim Harbaugh, which is why they're winning these games still, which
Mhm.
is why they're still in the contention for the division title. However, but man, these injuries are piling up. And then you got the Colts, who really actually should be 6-0. They should have won that game against the Rams if it wasn't for Adonai Mitchell dropping the ball an inch before the goal line. So the Colts technically should be undefeated. Had a little bit of a shaky game defensively against the Cardinals and Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett played a really good game against the Colts defense last week. But this Colts team is really good. Daniel Jones continues to prove that he belongs as the Colts starting quarterback. Just doing a really great job distributing the ball to this great offense. So paired with the injuries, I'm going to go with the favorite here. I'm going to pick the Colts in this one. I just think they got a better team, a better roster. Chargers are hurting right now. They're really hurting, and if that Chargers defense, I don't know if Khalil Mack is coming back, but if he can't come back, this Charger defense just has not looked the same without him. And that Colts offense can explode for points like they did. They scored 40 points against the Raiders. So yeah, give me the Colts in this one. Yeah, they might run all over this Chargers offense because this offense runs through Jonathan Taylor in the run game, and the Chargers have been struggling against rushing attacks. So give me the Colts in a big game by Jonathan Taylor, 31-21.
One of the biggest pushbacks that people have regarding the Colts' current record is, well, they've played an easy schedule. Well, okay, maybe so, but here's the thing: nobody in their right mind thought that the Colts would be 5-1 with Daniel Jones as their quarterback. And I'm looking at their schedule right now, Thad. Um, their second game, they beat the Broncos. Now they only beat them by 1 point, but they completely shredded the Broncos defense, and the Broncos have arguably the best defense in the league, and the Broncos have now solidly emerged as one of the better teams in the NFL. And as you said, they should have beaten the Rams, and the Rams are also one of the better teams in the NFL. So I don't really want to hear the easy schedule argument. The Colts have certainly proven that they're legit. Um, and as for the Chargers, yeah, that was not a pretty game against the Dolphins, one of the worst teams in the NFL. But they did win the game, and anytime you have a guy like Jim Harbaugh, your team is always going to have a chance at winning. History has certainly proven that. But we don't need to make this complicated. I think the Colts are also going to win as well. But I'm going to take a close one here. I'm going to take I'm going to take the Colts over the Chargers, 44-36. So an 8-point game, but yeah, 44 to
You're
36.
going for the 40 burgers this week, I see.
Yeah, I guess I am. So, all right, which leaves us with one final game, and that is one of the Monday night games between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions. Um, I was actually watching a game preview between the Bucs and the Lions, and they were talking about how it seems like every year um, we always play in Detroit, and yeah, it certainly seems that way. But a couple of years ago, we did play in Tampa, and the Lions killed us 20-6. I think. Um, you know, Obviously we talked about the Bucs before in the beginning, when I said how Baker Mayfield has led them to the best record in the NFL, a tie for the best record with the Colts, by the way. Funny enough, and so far all of our wins have been nail biters, except for the 49ers. We finally won a game that was not by the skin of our teeth. So that was nice. Um, and you know, we've been doing this without Mike Evans, but good news for Bucs fans is that Mike Evans more than likely is coming back. I don't think it's a guarantee, but my understanding is that he's been practicing with the team this week, which means that, barring anything else, he will be back this Sunday, which will be a major confidence boost. By the way, for a team that beat the 49ers down to their like seventh and eighth string wide receivers. Now, when I look at the Lion, sorry, Thad, but now when I look at the Lions, Jared Goff himself is having a phenomenal year. This is easily the best year he's been having, and but I do have concerns, not about the offense. Like, I think the offense is fine the way it is, but I do have concerns about the defense, because they got killed by the Chiefs. First game they got destroyed by Green Bay. There was one other team where they gave up 30 points. I don't remember who it was to, but they have been giving a lot of points. Now, funny enough, you look at the stats, and just from a yards given up perspective, the Lions have actually been a decent defense. They're barely outside the top 10 in passing yards and rushing yards given up, but when it comes to points given up, they are middle of the pack, if not below middle of the pack. And that is the main reason why I feel very confident in the Bucs here, especially with Mike Evans coming back. So call me a homer, but I think the Bucs are going to win. Now, unlike the 49ers, I think the Bucs are going to go back to their nail-biting winning ways, especially since the game is at Ford Field. I think this is going to be a battle. I don't expect either team to put the other one away for good. So give me the Bucs 31 to 24 over the Lions.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so I also am probably going to have this game as close. You got some good points about the defenses. I really also think that the Lions defense it's good, not great. However, as far as prediction goes for this game, I'm going to take last week because the Lions looked unstoppable after the first week where they got blown out by the Packers. Weeks 2 through 5, Lions looked unstoppable. The offense humming along, and no one could catch up with that offense. So the defense looked a little bit better. However, last week they got a good reminder that they're not like a complete team where the Chiefs just stomped them. Let's be frank. They just stomped them, and they were able to stop the Detroit offense. It also didn't help. There was a little bit of ref ball in that game. But as far as the side goes, the Chiefs were able to stop them. So the Lions got a reminder that they're not, the offense at least isn't like a full juggernaut. It's still a juggernaut, but not what I would consider a full juggernaut. So I think they're going to want to bounce back. I think this game's going to be really fun and really high scoring because I don't think the Bucs defense can stop anyone either. They can stop. They're probably a top 20 unit, I would say, but not an elite defense by any stretch of the imagination. So, but also Baker's just going to put up points when he wants to. He's shown to be the MVP so far. I really think he's the front runner, like I predicted. So it's going to be a high scoring game, but due to the Lions losing last week, I think they're going to bounce back with a win this week against the Bucs. I just think that Detroit offense is going to edge out their matchup against the Bucs defense versus the Bucs offense versus the Lions defense. Um, so, yeah, give me the Lions here 42-38. I've got a 40 burger this time. It's my turn.
Nice, nice. Yeah, no, those are those are all fair points, and under Todd Bowles, like we're never going to have a top 10 defense in terms of yards. With Todd Bowles, it's always about bend but don't break. But yeah, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Where you agree, where you disagree, and for the sake of our predictions, hopefully we end up being right. But we
Yeah,
will.
and as far as predictions go, we forgot to mention this last week. We
Oh,
forgot to mention the records. The records.
okay, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So last week, I forgot what it was 2 weeks ago, but I've kept the totals. So last week, Matt, Ed, and David all went 2-1. Everyone had one loss. I went undefeated at 3-0. So that puts me in the lead now. I'm 12-8. Ed in second at 11-9. Ed in third place at 9-11, and David in fourth at 6-15.
Hey, it's all about making progress. Okay,
There you go. You got a
it's not.
winning week last week.
Yeah, exactly. It's not where you start; it's where you finish. All right.
There you go. That's
Well,
how it
anyway,
is.
thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm David Street. This is Thaddeus Lloyd, and this was the Snap Count Show.